corner nations rise, with fire burning in their eyes, a tapestry of hopes and fears.
93%. Let that number sink in for a second. That's the win rate Belgium managed in their 2026 World Cup qualifying group. I mean, that's staggering.
It really is. A performance like that, well, it tells you something. Demands a closer look, definitely.
Exactly. And that's what we're doing today. You shared some really fascinating material on the Belgium national team, and it paints this picture of a squad, with a rich history, but also one that's clearly changing, evolving.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission, if you like, for this deep dive is to get past just the headlines, impressive as they are, and really try to understand what drove that qualification, look at their journey, the tactics.
The innovations as well.
Yeah, the tactical shifts, and, well, ultimately try and figure out what their chances might actually look like for 2026.
Yeah, try to get under the hood, see what makes them tick in the current landscape of international football.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Belgium's football story, it goes way back, right? Yeah. Inaugural World Cup, 1930. But becoming this, consistent force we see now, that's been quite a journey. Lots of ups and downs.
Oh, absolutely. For decades, it was about, just establishing themselves. But then you fast forward and certain moments really start to stand out. Getting to the final of the European Championship in 1980.
Right.
That was huge. Kind of announced them as a serious contender in Europe.
And then, well, everyone remembers the rise of the so-called golden generation.
Mm-hmm.
Pushed them all the way to #1 in the FIFA rankings, 2015?
Exactly, 2015. That felt like a real shift in perception.
Yeah, definitely.
And that era, it gave us some properly memorable wins, like that crazy 3-2 comeback against Japan, 2018 World Cup.
Oh, I remember that one. Heart-stopping stuff.
Absolutely. Pure attacking drama. Or think about the 4-0 against Hungary in the 2022 qualifiers. Just complete control.
And looking at their World Cup history overall, it's such a mix, isn't it? You got the high of 3rd place in 2018. Fantastic achievement.
Mm-hmm.
But then quarterfinals in 2014, 4th place way back in 86. They're always kind of there.
That's a really key point. There's this recurring thing of exceptional talent getting so close.
Agonizingly close sometimes.
Yeah, but maybe just not quite getting over the final hurdle. And that history, well, it adds this extra layer of pressure or maybe motivation for 2026.
Which brings us neatly to the recent qualifiers. Getting through means it's their 4th World Cup in a row.
I think that puts them in pretty elite company, doesn't it?
It really does. Speaks volumes about their consistency, the structure they have in place, and the way they qualified this time. It wasn't just winning games. There was a real tactical discipline on show.
You could see that.
They really dominated key matches, stuck to a clear game plan, executed it well.
And it wasn't always easy, right? The material you shared mentioned injuries, having to chop and change the team a bit.
Yeah, and that's where you see their adaptability. Being able to keep performing despite those setbacks, that tells you a lot about the squad's resilience. And the coaching, too.
Tested their depth, I suppose, especially against some of those tricky teams fighting for playoffs. For sure. And you could also see maybe a bit of a tactical evolution compared to the last few campaigns. They weren't just static.
Okay, so let's talk coaching. Domenico Tedesco comes in. He's got this idea of adaptive football. What does that actually mean on the pitch? What does it look like?
Well, what's interesting is the flexibility he seems to want. This adaptive football. It's about not being locked into just one way of playing. We've seen them switch pretty smoothly between keeping the ball, being patient,
Right.
and then suddenly, boom, rapid counterattacks. Those Nations League games against Germany and France gave us a few hints.
Mm-hmm. And the friendlies against Italy seem like more focus on being solid at the back.
Yeah, maybe tighter coordination, but still with those wingbacks getting forward, contributing to attacks. It's not just parking the bus.
And the sources mentioned specific things like data-driven substitutions. That sounds very modern.
It does. Likely looking at real-time stats, fatigue levels, specific matchups they can exploit with a fresh player. Very analytical.
And those rotational midfield systems. They tried that against Northern Ireland, apparently. What's the thinking there?
Probably a few things. Makes them less predictable in the middle, harder to mark, maybe disrupts the opponent's shape, and it potentially gives them different ways to attack from central areas. Plus, crucially, they brought in young players, too. 3 U21s got debuts in the 2024 qualifiers.
Right, so investing in the future while still trying to win now.
Exactly. It signals they're thinking long-term, too.
So it feels like the big goal here with all these changes is maybe learning from those knockout stage disappointments in the past
I think so.
and really trying to maximize the, let's be honest, incredible technical talent they have in that squad.
Precisely. It feels like a recognition that, okay, the talent's always been there, but maybe a smarter, more flexible tactical approach is needed for those really tight, high-pressure games.
Okay, but tactics are only as good as the players executing them. And the material highlights some key guys who really delivered in qualifying. Kevin De Bruyne, 7 assists. Still world class.
Oh, absolutely. His vision, his passing, it's just exceptional. And then you've got Lukaku popping up with those crucial late winners. That's invaluable.
Clutch.
Exactly. In those tight moments, you need that experience, that composure. But it's also really positive to see younger players stepping up. Zeno de Bast, the young defender.
Yeah, saw his name mentioned. Impressive stats.
92% completion rate on defensive actions in key qualifiers. For a player his age, that's remarkable maturity. Very promising.
And it wasn't just individual moments, was it? The sources mentioned tactical awareness, too, like Trossard's positioning against Italy, creating space.
Yeah, that's a great example. Shows he understands how his movement affects the whole team, pulls defenders around.
And Tedesco apparently praised the wingbacks for calculated risk-taking against North Macedonia.
Right, and that tells you it's encouraged. It's not just about being safe. It's about using every player smartly to create chances. Even defenders or wingbacks taking a gamble sometimes. It all fits into that adaptive idea.
Looking at their qualifying group, it also shows how they adapted. Against Northern Ireland, they didn't have much of the ball, average possession was quite low, but they still nicked that late winner.
Right, ground it out.
Then against Italy, much more possession, comfortable scoreline in the end, but needed a big save late on.
Still had to be switched on.
And against North Macedonia, it was more dominant, lots of possession, lots of goals, kind of put them away early.
And that just underlines the flexibility, doesn't it? They can tailor the approach, dig in against a defensive side like Northern Ireland, control the game against Italy, or really impose themselves like against North Macedonia.
Yeah.
And those recent Nations League games showed it too, tweaking the midfield to disrupt France, making subs that turned the game against Germany. They seem able to react.
And that mix of youth and experience keeps coming up.
Yeah.
Yohan Bakayoko getting 4 goals in qualifying. That's alongside the big names. Has to be a good sign.
Oh, it's vital. You need that blend. The veterans who know how to handle tournament pressure, plus the kids bringing energy, maybe a bit of fearlessness. Bakayoko showing he's ready to contribute now, not just one for the future.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty of how they play. This hybrid 3-4-3 formation. What's the idea behind that? How does it work?
Okay, so the hybrid 3-4-3. It's interesting because it gives them options. With the ball, it can look more like a 3-2-5 sometimes. Wing backs bombing forward, loads of players attacking.
Right, lots of width.
Exactly. But without the ball, they can drop back into a more solid 5-at-the-back shape.
Yeah.
And they press aggressively, try to win it back high. Plus, the attackers swap positions a lot, makes them really hard to track.
And the Nations League games against France and Italy were mentioned as examples where this system really troubled good defenses. How?
Well, mainly through that unpredictability. Players don't stick to one spot. A winger might pop up centrally. A midfielder drifts wide. It just pulls defenders out of position, creates gaps that maybe wouldn't appear against a more fixed shape. Constant movement.
And this positional overload strategy sounds important. Flooding certain areas to force mistakes. The data suggests a lot of their goals came from that.
Yeah, that seems key. It's not just chucking players forward randomly. It's about strategically creating 2v1s or 3v2s in dangerous areas, near the box usually.
Overwhelming the defenders.
Exactly. Forcing them into quick decisions under pressure, making mistakes, creating passing options they weren't expecting. The fact that it's become a bigger source of goals suggests a deliberate tactical focus they've worked on.
And the midfield rotations, helping those quick transitions. Defense to attack in a flash. That's crucial in the modern game.
Absolutely vital. Having midfielders who can drop deep, pick up the ball, and immediately play sharp forward passes to launch a counter, that bypasses the opponent's press, catches them off guard.
Like that stat against France. Most counters starting with deep passes.
Yeah, shows it's a planned move, not just luck. They want to transition fast.
Okay, but no team's perfect. Strengths and weaknesses. The attack looks potent, obviously, but the sources flag up this potential issue with aerial duels. That could be a worry against certain teams.
It could be, yeah. At a World Cup, set pieces, crosses into the box. They often decide tight games. If your aerial duel win rate is lower than, say, past winners like Argentina, teams might target that.
Exploit it.
Potentially. Send big guys forward, put balls into the box. But it seems that the coaching staff knows this. They seem to be trying to compensate tactically.
How so?
Well, one way mentioned is using tactical fouls higher up the pitch. Stop the counter before it gets to a crossing situation or leads to a dangerous free kick.
Ah, okay. Nip it in the bud. The comparison table idea you shared really highlighted the difference in aerial success compared to France or Italy, but their pressing effectiveness looked really high.
Exactly. So maybe it's a trade-off. They might concede a bit physically in the air, but they aim to win the ball back so often and so high up that the opposition doesn't get many chances to test that aerial weakness in the first place.
Right, proactive defending.
And they do adapt. Remember, after that Nations League loss to Germany, they apparently work on set pieces and cut down the goals they conceded from them quite a bit afterwards, so they're clearly trying to address it.
So putting it all together, outlook for 2026, that 93% qualifying rate, it's a massive statement of intent.
It really is. Shows they can perform consistently at a high level. And the tactical changes under Tedesco, like that counterattacking display against France we talked about, show they're not standing still, they're evolving.
And you've got the key experienced players still delivering, plus the young talent coming through, all within this flexible system. Feels like the pieces are there, doesn't it?
The potential is definitely there. The talent, the tactical plan, the ability to adapt, it's all positive. But, the World Cup finals,
Yeah.
it's another level entirely.
Yeah, the pressure cooker.
Exactly. The draw matters, how they handle knockout pressure against teams who know how to win tournaments.
Yeah.
That's the real test for this adaptive football.
Still, that ability to grind out wins when needed, like that late one against Northern Ireland,
Yeah.
that must build confidence. Knowing you can win ugly if you have to.
Oh, massively. Those moments forge belief. Knowing you've overcome challenges, dug deep, that's huge mentally going into a tournament. It wasn't just easy wins. They had to fight for it.
So, wrapping this deep dive up then,
Yeah.
it's clear Belgium aren't just qualifiers. They're an intriguing prospect for 2026. Impressive record, yes, but also this tactical evolution happening.
Definitely. That blend of experience and youth within this innovative setup makes them really compelling.
Hopefully this is giving you, the listener, a much clearer picture of what makes this Belgium team tick right now, why they're maybe one to watch closely.
Yeah, their journey, their consistency, but also their willingness to change things up. It's a fascinating mix.
And it leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? Thinking about their history, all those near misses, how much will that fuel their hunger this time around? And the big question, can this clever adaptive football really compensate for that potential aerial weakness when they come up against the very, very best in the knockout stages? Something to chew on as we look ahead.